Welcome, everyone. This is Gwydion. Today, I'm going to be going through a game I found on itch.io called Grim Dungeons and Ancient Lore. And I don't normally do videos during the week. I spend a lot of time working and a lot of hours working, I should say, and up super early. So I'm usually not ready to do any streaming during the week. But I'm really excited about this game. It's available for $7.50, $7.50 on itch.io, and it's by Sasha Jarkaz. And I apologize if I'm butchering that name. So I'm just going to go through it and do a flip through and maybe show you how I played it and what tool I used and to play this as a physical game, even though I'm showing you the PDF. And right now it's only available in PDF. It's available in both a German, which is the original language, and then the conversion. And I have interacted with the author on itch.io. He's been very kind to listen to all my questions and also some of the corrections that I think just didn't quite translate to the English version. So I'll go through that as well. I believe for me, this is kind of a very light version of something like Four Against Darkness. Now, to be clear, you're only playing as a solo player, but the vibes and how you create the dungeon, I feel like, are like Four Against Darkness. So, one thing I did see some people saying something about AI art. So honestly, I don't want to get into is it AI or not. I guess this cover image might be, and maybe it is. I see the pixels or what have you, but there's not a lot of art in this. So I just like the game, and I'm just here to talk about the game. So anyway, let's jump in. All right, so it's done in a spread format. So I'm just going to be talking through it. So you can see if you look at the forward, as it were, I mean, he's really talking about gaming back in 1991, and it sounds like he played some D&D, and this gave him some real motivation and inspiration for this. So there's a quick start guide. So you will have four attributes: strength, dex, intelligence, and wisdom. So that's going to be very familiar, right? And in step two, you're going to calculate your stats. So I'm not going to read through everything, but I'll try to just touch on the highlights here. But hit points are 10 plus your level and strength. So one thing I like about this is there's a real leveling up mechanic here, and you can go through multiple dungeons, level up your character, and get unique abilities as part of that. And it just I really found the system pretty engaging for me. So let's just keep flipping through. Armor class 9 plus dexterity divided by 2 plus bonuses from items. You always round down, as you'll see down here. Your attacks will be melee or also could be ranged. Now, this is the quick start guide, so he's just showing you here a fighter. So a fighter happens to have armor class of 9 plus dex divided by 2 plus bonuses, but we'll get into character creation later. Fighters start with a short sword, leather armor, and a healing potion. And you can see leather armor gives you a slight benefit to armor class, and a short sword does a flat damage of 4. But I'll get into, there is an ability to go over that, and I'll kind of explain how as we get into this. So entering the dungeon, really that's it. If you want to start with the quick start, you can actually just do that right there and jump right into the dungeon. But let's keep going into like what do you find in the first room. So he shows fighting a goblin. So goblin's got basic stats. Excuse me. Rusty short sword, armor class of 12, hit points of 13. Initiative, you're going to roll every round, and in his case all monsters have a flat bonus for initiative. So his is 2d6 plus 2. For you, it's going to be 2d6 plus your dexterity. So attack modifier plus 4 to hit and damage of 3. So again, you're going to be rolling initiative every round. If you tie, then you get to go first. And I won't go through the example. It's pretty obvious. But when you attack this, I kind of like this and I find it interesting. But you're going to roll 2d6 if you're a fighter and you're using melee, and you're going to add your strength to your attack roll. So if you roll a 5 and a 2, then the result is obviously 7. You add 5 for your strength. In this case, that's what the fighter had. So you get a 12. So your attack is a 12 and the goblin's armor class is a 12. Now, I think this was a typo, but let's just say that your attack roll total was a 14. So if it was a 14 and his armor class is 12, that's 2 higher than the goblin's armor class. So not only do you hit, because you just need to meet the armor class in order to hit it, but you get anything above the armor class is additional damage. So you're going to do 2 damage because 14 minus 12 is 2, and you're going to add your weapon damage of 4, so you do 6 damage. So I kind of like that. I think that's pretty cool. And the goblin, when he attacks, it's just always going to be the flat amount of damage. If you do defeat the enemy, you're gonna get a potential reward. One of the things I pointed out is if you look later on in the rules here, the reward should be a 1d6 gold plus a key. Keys are used for opening locked chests, so I think he'll update that later. But you can get other things, a healing potion. You can get clues, and I know there's some other games. I'm trying to think. Maybe it's Wraithhound I'm thinking of, or 11th Beast. But the clues allow you some bonuses when you get to the boss of the dungeon. So the more clues you have, the easier the boss fight will be for you. So then we get into, instead of the quick start, actual character creation. So there are different class types. You can have a fighter, and again, different abilities. Fighter can wield melee weapons, a shield, and medium or heavy armor. An archer, which is what I selected for my first playthrough. You get to use ranged weapons, and you get to attack twice in the first round of combat, which I think is fun, is cool. And a wizard does have a focus item, and you can cast spells. So again, attributes, it tells you kind of what's most important. Strength for fighters, dex for archers, intelligence for wisdom, and intelligence for wizards. There is no cleric, so wisdom does help you as you're searching for things. So as you're looking and trying to investigate rooms, wisdom can really help you. So you have 10 points to distribute in character creation. So if you don't use a quick start and just kind of start with that fighter, then you have to assign at least 1 point to every value and a maximum of 5. And the attack values differ for the 3 different classes. The fighter does melee attack, 2d6 plus strength plus any bonuses. Archer, 2d6 plus dex. Wizard, 2d6 plus intelligence. And then again, for your armor class, a fighter, you start with 9 plus dex divided by 2 plus bonuses. Archer, you start with 7. And armor class for a wizard starts with 6. And I think it's kind of cool that you're allowed to use your intelligence divided by 2. Hit points are the same for everyone, 10 plus your level plus strength. So again, they will go up as you level up. Spell power, I'm not going to go into spells too much, but I'll show that to you briefly. But intelligence times 4 plus bonuses. So you get an example here. You get starting equipment, and each class gets its own starting equipment. In addition to like weapons and armor, there's sometimes you can get potions, and a healing potion heals 5 hit points of damage. Soul shards are kind of like, I don't know, pick your game, but like inspiration. You can use it to re-roll your own dice, not the dice of monsters. And then for an archer, again, you start with like a healing potion as well as a short bow. And everyone does start with some soul shards. A wizard, simple staff, robe, healing potions, and some gold. Leveling up, it's kind of what you would think, but you do have to gain like 750 experience points to get to the second level. So I think you're going to be going through a few dungeons in order to level up. Talents, I find this pretty cool. You have talents that are just part of your class that you'll get when you level up, but you also gain talent points, and you can get 1 talent that is within your character class, but you can choose which talent that is after you get through your core talents that will be assigned at levels 3, 5, and 7. All right, let's keep going here. So these give you a little idea on those talents. So for a fighter, weapon master, shield wall, berserker, rage. I won't read through all these. You can purchase the game, hopefully, if you like this, and look at these more. But then again, you can unlock 2 options of additional talents for a fighter, weapon master, mighty blow, and then archer. Obviously, it's more around archery, improved focus, and Wizards is going to be more about arcane focus and different types of powerful magic. So spells, you'll see spell types, attack spells, enhanced spells, and it tells you how to learn spells, how to cast a spell. Some will be an attack, so you will have to roll to attack to hit. Some are just going to be enhancement, so you don't have to do an attack roll. I do think you still have to think you have to roll for enhancements, but I'm not quite sure because I haven't played a wizard yet. So all kinds of spell lists, which I think are cool. Oh, here we go. Enhancement. No, the spell takes effect automatically. I just think there's a certain number of spell points that you'll have to use. But there are some things like, I guess, akin to a cantrip, like Ghostly Strike. It's always learned in 0 spell points. So I think you will have to roll to hit because it's an attack spell, but it'll do 1d6 damage. So a lot of different options, lay on hands, arcane barriers. So you've got what, 5 different level 1 spells, and I think, yeah, 3 level 2 spells, 3 level 3 spells. So some decent options for a very small game. I think that's cool. And it tells you a little bit about the soul shards, re-rolling dice, and how to activate artifacts. Basic rules. So this will get into what a little bit I've already covered, but initiative. Again, you're going to roll each round to determine who goes first. Melee attack or ranged attack, casting a spell, how to use an item, and damage calculation. So this, one thing that I clarified with the author on this page 21 here is the damage calculation of if you exceed the opponent's armor class, you get that additional damage as well as your fixed damage. But for the monsters, they only get their fixed damage. There's a few things, and even like critical hits, the monsters have their own critical hit. I think usually it adds like your class level damage. So if I'm level 1, if it's a critical hit, there's 1 more damage against you. But obviously the higher you go up, the more damage that crit would do. But for you, on a crit, you double your total damage. And if you die, you die. So this makes it clear that everything's lost. And being dead in this game, you are officially dead. So dice checks, there are going to be some times where you're rolling for different target values on difficulty classes. There are artifacts, which are like items of extraordinary power. I know I'm going through relatively quickly because I don't want this to be too long. So dungeon creation. So this is where it feels just a little bit like 4 Against Darkness and other like 2d6 Dungeon maybe and other games like that. But some of these are optional, but you can roll for the purpose of the dungeon. And I did all these because I thought it was fun to kind of include, and I got a crypt, but and this is just purely flavor. Location of the dungeon, like where is it located? And it's purely to allow you to help immerse yourself in the game. You don't have to do this. Structure of the dungeon, condition, number of levels. So this does get into a little bit more of the game mechanics. He does tell you that in your first few games, you should start for a maximum of 5 to 8 rooms. So I did that. I made mine 1 floor and 6 rooms, but you have your tables here to roll on to make it your own. Furnishing, if you do want to roll and come up with more information on what's in your rooms, you can. And lighting conditions. Again, all these are optionals. And I did roll for a quest. I didn't lean into that too much, but mine was destroying a magical threat. So then you get into like your actual turn mechanic and how to explore. So you're going to roll first. And what I ended up doing is I rolled like 3 different dice, and I'll show you. I used a physical board that I purchased on Etsy from the Tabletop Engineer. If you don't know his channel, go check that out. But I love his channel. I'll show you that. But you're going to roll for, is it a room or a passage? You're going to roll for the room size or the passage which is on the next page. And it'll tell you, like, you can determine how many squares is it within this range. And they're all, I think in general, it's going to be a square or a rectangle. Number of additional exits, because obviously you create an exit or an entrance, if you will, when you create the room. Roll on room content, and on the next page, so on the passage, the size, and whether or not it's empty or if it has a roaming monster. And then you will, depending on, let's see, let me go back here. Yeah, the room content, when you roll on that, it's empty and you can search it, or you might have a threat or an event. So this gives you a little bit more about the threat and the events tables. So if it's empty and you're searching, you're going to roll on this table, and there's a number of treasure tables I'll show you. On the threat table, you're either going to have an encounter or a trap. The encounter, and again, I like that it kind of scales, and there's a handful. I think there's 4 per level of types of monsters. So I think he gets up to 6. So I think if I have this right, I think there's 24 different monsters you can encounter. So for a small game, I think that's pretty cool. And then, sorry, I'm getting over a cough that I've had for 4 weeks, but I'm almost over it. Trap table, so it tells you a little bit about the type of trap and then what type of effect you can attempt to avoid or disarm it by making a dex check, DC 11. So if successful, you can disarm the trap and search the room after you've taken care of that trap. Reward tables, again, this is where I said on the quick start rules, it didn't have this key, but he's going to add that. Event tables, so there's a handful of events here that you can learn about and figure out. You can escape from the dungeon. So if you get to a point where you think it's hopeless, you can get out of the dungeon, but you do have some consequences. You can flee, but all the clues you've gathered are lost, and escaping isn't free. You'll have to lose a certain amount of gold. And if you don't have that amount of gold, I assume that you have to return up to the amount you have. Then you can return. So there's more about camps and things like that. But let's get into the end of the dungeon. So if you have like 10 rooms, once you get to the end of the dungeon, you're going to figure out the boss. So before we get into that, these are all the treasure tables. So you have a number of tables you can roll on, and some of these are like nested tables. You roll first on, is it just outright treasure here, gold coins or gemstones, or do you get a much larger treasure and hoard? So you can look at all this. And again, it's important to remember, if you run into a locked chest, except for events that specifically say you can use your dex check, you can't open a chest unless you find a key. You can always go back and reopen something, though, if you find a key later. All right, weapon equipment and items. So there are different types of weapons. So a fairly good selection of weapons. And you can see, I've already pointed out to him, there's a handful of words like Morning Star and Greatsword that are written in German. So I just had to do some quick searching for what these are, but easy enough to change, and he'll fix those. Some other rare items that you can purchase if you get enough gold. And I don't know about rare and very rare. I don't know how I'll play that. I don't think there's a mechanic for whether or not you can find those. I think they just cost more. So wizards and focuses, more armor here. A lot more armor, potions, shields, artifacts that I think you can find throughout the game. And then monsters and creatures. So this gets into a little more specifics around each of the monsters, little description, and then you'll have the stats all here to look through, and XP. So you get, for defeating a goblin raider, you're going to get 50 XP. Now I did ask him. I encountered a bandit, and the bandit has something called nimble escape. I assumed that I wouldn't get his treasure if he escapes, but the author, Sasha, actually told me I shouldn't have even given myself XP. I might house rule that, hey, if he runs away because I defeated him, I might still give myself XP, but that would be a house rule because Sasha made it clear that's not how he intended it. All right, so more monsters here. Level 3, so the dire wolves, skeleton warriors, half ogres, wolf spiders. I haven't been coughing all day, and of course now I do. Giant spiders, so pretty good selection of shadow demon. So it's kind of cool. Very, very good selection of monsters. So then you get to your final boss, and the final boss is going to have, I don't want to say generic stats, but the stats are all going to be listed down here. Now you are going to roll to determine the name of the boss and like what type of boss. So is it a lich, and what's the final boss's name? But you can see that this all scales based on your class. Okay, so you're going to have, like, for attack modifier, 4+ class level to hit. Now it does change. If you have clues, you get, and this tells you right here, the clues weaken the boss's attacks. So like in this case, what it's saying is, let's see if it tells you up here. So in this case, it's saying you've collected 3 clues. So in general, if let's see, if they roll a 3, you'd take 7 damage. Oh, sorry, he's level 4. So basically, it would be, attack level would be 4 plus the class level, so it'd be 7. But you can take off, if you have 3 clues, you can take 3 off. So when I fought my boss, so given his was a 4 plus 1 level, which was a modifier of 5, I was able to take off. Sorry, I keep saying the attack modifier. It's the damage. Schaden is German for damage, so it'd be 1d6 plus, let's see, 1. But in this case, I'm able to take off 3 damage if I have 3 clues. So sorry, I convoluted that. So then, yeah, again, roll for the names, and then you fight your encounter, and you get rewards on the reward table. So pretty fun. And then this is some examples of some dungeons and then some FAQs. So that's it. I'm going to show you, though. I'm going to turn off the PDF view and show you my main screen for a second. Let me get this off. So again, I bought this on Etsy, and this is from, I think it's from Wares by Jim, but Jim is the tabletop engineer. It's intended for 2d6 dungeon, which I love, but I found that it works really well for this game. So I just drew my dungeon. Yeah, my writing is horrible, but I drew my dungeon and I only came up with like 6, 7 rooms. But I was able to put things like my initiative up here, so I remembered it's 2d6 plus dex. There is minimum damage when you're attacking, so as long as you hit, you're going to do at least 1 damage. Crit, soul shards allow me to reroll dice. And then when I was fighting the monster, I just always wrote it up here. So demon cultists, this was my final boss battle. But AC of 13, initiative, I just put all of those up here, the XP, and then I tracked my health here, and then I just used a d20 to keep track of his health. And then I made notes, like you can see I wrote down my initial notes from rolling about the dungeon. So my purpose, I said temple, but maybe that was right. That location was in the mountains. Structure was carved stone. The condition was it was abandoned. 1 level, weak daylight. And this just gave me a little bit more. It got me immersed a little bit more. And then what I did personally is I wanted to roll on, you're really only rolling D6s. So I came up with different colored dice and I was rolling myself. So I said room or passage. I used the purple die so I could just roll 4 dice at once and determine, is it a room or passage? Okay, then great. If it's a room, what's the room size? And that was my yellow die. If it was a passage, I don't think maybe I do have to roll on that. I don't remember. But number of exits was my blue die, and then content was red. So I could just much more quickly adjudicate the game. So that's it. I hope you found this useful. And I should turn that off and go back to the PDF view for a second and open the PDF. Of course, it's not opening. I don't know why it's acting weird. There we go. So I really hope you enjoy this, and I'd encourage you to check it out, Grim Dungeon and Ancient Lore, itch.io. I'll put a link in the description, and that's it. Give me a like if you like this content, or give me a comment if you have any other questions or want other recommendations. Till next time, everyone, happy gaming all.